Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 299 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. Glad to be with you. We are still talking about COVID-19 and the bar exam. It has been another very busy week of changes in terms of the upcoming July or fall bar exams in 2020. We're going to update you on all of that in just a moment and give you the very latest information that we've got. Now, you may have noticed that we typically, for years and years, have put out this podcast episode in the middle of the week. But with the recent changes and all of the activity that's occurring around COVID-19, we've pushed these episodes up into the weekend. We want to make sure that we're getting this information to you as quickly as possible and that it's useful to you and current. So for the foreseeable future, we're going to try and broadcast to you over the weekends so that you can get the very latest information as the courts and the jurisdictions close on Friday of every week. Now, as I said, today we're going to talk about what's going on. I've got our senior editor and mentor, Megan Saya, joining me again today to talk about all of those changes. After we finished recording the episode, there were some additional changes made late in the night on Friday, and so we'll update those at the very end of this episode. Now, before we jump into the episode, I want to let you know that you can watch on video by going to celebrationbarreview.com/299. That's the episode number. Or you can listen to the podcast by subscribing in Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, radio.com, Spotify, or just about any place that podcasts are syndicated and presented, and we invite you to check that out. Before we get into the details of what's changed around the bar exam in the last few days and even the last few hours, I want to give you a couple of things that are going on that we think are significant. The first is that Florida will release their bar results on Monday. That would be April 13th. We wish everyone in the Florida exam good luck. We'll talk a little bit about that as Megan and I will discuss a little bit about Florida results and what we think the implications are for that particular exam. Also want to let you know that we are conducting interviews with some of our successful passing bar takers, and typically that's what we put into these podcast episodes, but we're not doing that right now for obvious reasons. But I do want to direct you to the website where we've got those videos recorded, and I would encourage you to check them out. We've separated them by jurisdictions and states now, so they're a little easier to find, and we'll give you that link in the show notes so that you can go ahead and check those out. We did a great interview with a UBE student this week who was a repeat bar taker and raised her score to 285. That was good enough to pass every jurisdiction in the UBE. I think you're going to want to see how she did that. It's quite a story. And we'll continue to update those case studies and testimonials for you over the weeks to come as results come out around the country. And then the last thing I wanted to let you know about that certainly is related to all of the things happening in the bar exam right now is that we've put together an all-new webinar training session called Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam. And we really want to encourage you to join us. It's a 1-hour presentation with a live Q&A to update the information and answer your questions. We believe that with all of the uncertainty and changes around the bar exam, there's a real need for people to understand what's going on and why this might be the best time for you to take the bar exam in spite of all of the strangeness and anxiety. Now, this webinar is being given several times a week on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and again with a live Q&A. Registration is really simple and it's totally free. Just go to celebrationbarreview.com/now and you can register. We'll also put a link in the show notes so that you can go ahead and save your seat and then join us for this free training webinar. It's something I don't think you're going to want to miss. So please join us for Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam. All right. I'm not going to keep you waiting any longer. Let's jump into our discussion that Megan and I held about the changes in the bar exam for July 2020 and into the fall. This has been a really crazy week, hasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Crazy month. I mean, someone was telling me that it was a month ago today was the last day of school for pretty much every kid in California. So I don't know for you guys where you are, but this is sort of the D-Day of when it really hit us, at least in California, that this was serious. And we pretty much, that's when we started just totally staying home. So, yeah.
And I think that from the standpoint of the bar exam, the bar exam community is just starting to really get caught up and react to this, the Supreme Courts of different states. Mm-hmm. So we are going to start today by doing a recap of the states where we know information. Now, June has put up in your chat box, you should see a sticky note up at the top with a link. This is a link to a page on our website that we are updating multiple times a day. As it's gone on, we updated it, 20 minutes before we came on air today, because there were changes.
Right.
The changes made this morning.
Yes.
So what I want to do is walk through some of those changes, tell you what we know, but want to encourage you to use that site because it's got the link to the actual orders in different states. So I'm not doing this alphabetically. I'm doing it as it's on our chart. So bear with me while we go through those. And Megan, if I miss something, let me know. What I want to just let people know is the state and the date that we know, and then talk about anything that's unusual that's happening. Connecticut, a UBE state, has simply said that they are not giving a July test. They will be in the fall of 2020. And that's all we know about Connecticut. Hawaii, which uses the multi-state essay exam, but not the full UBE, also has said that they are going to an exam in fall of 2020, and they have not identified a date yet. Massachusetts, which is a UBE state, has announced a date of September 30th and October 1st, and that is the date that they are now planning to give their exam instead of July. The next state, New Jersey, is the first state where we get to something that's a little different here. New Jersey has said that they will give the exam in fall of 2020. They've not picked a date. But now New Jersey has come up with something different with respect to a limited practice waiver. Do you want to talk about that for just a minute?
Yeah, so the practice waivers, what we're seeing come out is that they are allowing recent graduates, and in some cases, are there any jurisdictions where have they limited it to just the graduates of law schools in that state? Or is it?
I think New Jersey has indicated that they would just only deal with Seton Hall and Rutgers.
So I think graduates of law school, accredited law schools in that state are allowed to practice under a supervising attorney for a limited amount of time without having passed the bar exam.
We're going to have some comments to make about that generally, but that's the rule right now in New Jersey. So, and there's a link to the rule if you're a New Jersey bar taker and you want to see that. But if you took the exam previously and you're retaking, this isn't going to apply to you. If you graduated from law school in 2019, 2018, before that, not going to apply to you. If you graduated law school, we think outside of New Jersey in 2020, it's not going to apply to you there. Okay, so the next state, the big one, is New York. New York has identified a date of September 9th and 10th right now. That was the first thing they did. The second thing that then happened is that a group of deans of New York law schools offered up their universities for testing sites for New York to give the exam in multiple locations, which makes sense. You're trying to get social distancing and dispersing. But then New York came up with a relatively vague statement. We've got a link to it on our page, talking about they may need to prioritize enrollment in the exam. So you want to talk about the prioritization concept?
Yeah. So when this came down, we weren't sure what that was going to mean necessarily, because all New York said was that they were probably going to have to use some form of prioritization. So basically they don't anticipate having enough room for everyone who would want to take the UBE in New York. So in September. And so what they're going to have to do is they're going to come up with some system to figure out who can take it and who can't. The good news is they're not going to do it totally random. I think that's a better way of doing it. We have a little bit more clarity about what prioritization could mean as of about a half an hour ago.
Let's talk about North Dakota, because North Dakota a half hour ago issued an order, and they are going to limit their exam to 85 applicants. Now, that would be a little scary. They had 61 last year in July, so they've got some room. But we're speculating that North Dakota might have caught wind of what we've been telling people, which is you might want to be moving away from a a populated UBE state to a less populated UBE state. And so they preemptively, I think, came up with some priorities. You want to talk about those priorities?
Yeah. So what North Dakota said, which again, we don't know for sure if this is what New York is going to do, but it could be instructive, is that North Dakota is first prioritizing people who had already registered for the bar there before April 1st. So that would mean, let's say if New York does it, if they did something similar, it would be too late. It wouldn't be, you couldn't rush to sign up now before they close the window. It would be, hey, a while ago, a couple weeks ago, who had already signed up. Their second priority is graduates of the University of North Dakota School of Law. So in New York, what that would look like if they did that is it would be obviously prioritizing anyone who graduated from Columbia, NYU, et cetera. And then the third category was basically everyone else, in which case they'll prioritize, it sounded like, mostly by when they register. So like Jackson said, what we are assuming, because the cap is significantly higher than they had last year during a normal administration, what we're wondering is, as big states like New York say, we're very clearly, we are not going to be able to guarantee that everyone who wants to take the bar in September in New York is going to be able to take the bar there. And because New York is a UBE state, that we would anticipate happening is that there will be a flood of people who do not get picked to take the bar physically in the state of New York. They will go to other UBE jurisdictions instead. And so some of them just don't have the capacity. North Dakota does not have, 10 different law schools who are willing and able to volunteer classroom space to give the exam in a more spaced out fashion. So that's what we're anticipating with that. But again, this is speculation on our part because we just don't know all the facts yet.
Yeah. And I know that, well, there's a lot of possibilities here. Yeah. If I were a New York bar taker, but then I would start taking a very active look at other UBE jurisdictions that you are able to sit for. If you went to an ABA accredited U.S. law school, you can sit in any UBE jurisdiction. So you could look at Alabama or New Mexico or Colorado or, some other jurisdiction. Well, Colorado's probably not a great choice because they're pretty slammed too. But looking at other jurisdictions where you might be able to take the exam, because your score gets translated back to New York, regardless of where you sit for the test. So it's not that you have to take it in New York to be a member of the New York bar. So that's one thing. If you, however, are a foreign trained attorney, as you already know, there are a limited number of U.S. jurisdictions that will allow you to sit for the exam, and you're going to have to start checking very carefully to see what states might allow you to sit for their exam. I know that one of the UBE states is Washington State, but that is another state that clearly has been hit hard. And then it was very difficult. They have not announced anything yet, but that's not a place I would choose to go to take the UBE. Now, there may be other states that will open themselves up to foreign trained attorneys, but you should start doing some work on that. We can tell you to look at all of these, but you'll ultimately have to make your own decisions about that. We would tell you to be proactive. The responsibility is going to be yours to see what the rules are in your jurisdiction and to find out what these other jurisdictions are doing. That's part of the reason we've linked to the orders on our webpage. So that's one of the things to be aware of. So just to wrap up the North Dakota rule, which was kind of weird, in addition to prioritization, they've said we'll either give the exam July 28th and 29th, the normal dates, or September 9th and 10th if we can't give it in July. Okay, so we've still got a few more states to get through. Let me talk about these. The next state that we've got is Tennessee. They are still indicating that they're going to give the exam on July 28th and 29th, but they have indicated that they are going to allow a temporary waiver. Tennessee said that applicants can practice without having passed the bar for a limited period of time going up to November of 2021. And so again, as best we can tell, that rule only applies to spring 2020 law graduates. So again, if you're a repeat taker in Tennessee, that's not going to apply to you. I mean, you should check the rule, but not going to apply to you. And Tennessee is still expecting to give an exam in July. Vermont has set a date of September 9th and 10th, and no other changes there that I'm aware of. Arizona's still saying July 28th and 29th, but you want to talk about their waiver rule?
Yeah, so they did a similar waiver where very limited, if you graduated or you have not yet graduated, if you're graduating in spring of 2020, then you'll be able to practice law under a supervising attorney for a limited amount of time. The funny thing in Arizona is that your work can't be billed during that time. So you can get paid if the law firm chooses to pay you, but the law firm cannot bill clients for your work. So I think we both kind of agreed we're not sure that this will actually in practice apply to anyone, because I can't imagine that very many law firms in this economy are willing to take on a lawyer that they have to pay, but who is not able to bill out any hours to clients. So, but there you have it. It's a limited situation here for people in Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We've only got a couple states to go here. We're getting there.
Yeah.
Indiana is planning to give their exam in July 28th and 29th, and they also are going to offer a waiver. Allow anyone who graduated from law school after November of 2019 to be a legal intern until the February 2021 exam, provided they had not failed any exam prior to that date. So there you go. Alaska has announced a date of September 9th and 10th. No other rules there. And then DC today.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, DC. They have announced that they will not give the exam in July for sure. They have not, however, committed to a fall exam. So this is the first jurisdiction that's actually now raised the possibility that they may not give any more exams in 2020. And they said they will announce on May 4th, which is the date that the NCBE basically has said that they'll have to make a decision on May 5th. So I guess by the 4th, they'll make their decision in DC. We'll see what happens. I mean, again, it's a small jurisdiction. You would expect a lot of overflow from New York, New Jersey might be coming to them. And I suspect that's what they're trying to figure out as well. Does that mean you can't apply? I don't know. It's possible that you can apply in these states. You've just got to look at the rules and go from there. So, are we getting questions in the chat box about this?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, so I'm going to let you before we go on. Okay.
Yeah.
I can see a lot of stuff happening in the chat box, but I'm not looking at it. I'm going to let you go away.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. We wanted to get through all the jurisdictions first.
Okay. So that's what we know.
What would you advise UBE New York LLM students to do?
Yeah. Well, it's a tough one. I would continue to study, number one. The UBE will be the UBE wherever you take it and whenever you take it. I mean, start the character and fitness, make sure you start getting that. I would then look at other UBE jurisdictions for which your legal credentials are acceptable to practice or to sit for the exam, and start considering those and looking at those. Here's the worst case scenario. The absolute worst case is that you don't get to take another exam in 2020 and you start preparing for February 2021. For a foreign trained attorney, that's not a bad outcome. That gives you more time to study, and that would be my approach. But I want to emphasize that the importance of you continuing to study. The worst mistake anyone can make right now is to stop studying, trying to figure out all this other stuff, because then what's going to happen is you're suddenly going to be jerked into action and you will have lost weeks or months that would have been really valuable to you. So,
yeah, take advantage of it. The extra time if you end up with extra time. All right. The other thing I wanted to have you touch on is the ABA passed the resolution on practice waivers.
Yeah. Okay. So the ABA has a task force dealing with bar practice and bar exams, and they've come out as an advisory group and said, we think that there should be some period of time, a waiver for law graduates to practice without having to take the bar exam. My reaction to that is, okay, good. Let those people get out of the pool, because I believe that once they're out of the pool, you're still going to see roughly the same number of people passing the bar exam every year. And I think that simply creates more opportunities, particularly for repeat bar takers. But this is only a recommendation of the ABA, and every jurisdiction, as you can see, is making their own decisions. So I wouldn't put too much weight in it. The NCBE has nothing to say about it. I mean, they may say, yeah, we like that, or no, we don't, but it doesn't really change anything, because every state is its own unique entity. So I think there's that part of it. Do you want to add anything to that? I know you did some research on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think it's just good to know and keep in mind that we might be seeing more states adopt the practice waivers. We certainly have since the ABA came out with the recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're seeing some states who have not canceled the July exam do the practice waiver as the first step that they're taking, rather than canceling the exam first and then putting in the practice waiver. So,
yeah. And I think the other part is just to emphasize what you said earlier. I think there's going to be a very small number of people that actually are able to take advantage of these practice waivers. Yeah. Small legal boutique shops are not hiring new attorneys. And that I just don't see that happening. And so unless you already had a job, if you were a spring 2020 grad from a top law school and you have a job offer from a top law firm, that's probably the only group that's going to be impacted, and the people that had clerkships. And outside of that, you might be eligible because you graduated, but ineligible because you can't find a supervising attorney who's willing to take you on and can't bill for your time and is willing to take on salaries when most people are trying to shed salaries. So I think this might be more window dressing than reality. That's my sense of it.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to talk about really quickly with applications. A lot of states are recognizing now that things like fingerprinting and notarization are difficult, if not impossible. And so there are evolving rules and orders saying things like in Florida now, you can go without a fingerprint and go without a notary, but you've got to do certain things. You've got to attest to certain things. Make sure you check with your bar examiners. And you can't call them. You got to do this online, okay? But once you're online, check and see what the rules are. There are these orders being written almost on a daily basis now in states saying, we're waiving this rule or we're extending the deadline to get your fingerprints in or to get your notarized statements and so on. So don't let that stop you, but you have to be proactive. Don't assume that we're going to know and we're going to tell you. We are not keeping track of that kind of detailed rule in 50 jurisdictions. So I just want to make sure everybody's being proactive about that. Okay.
Yeah, great. All right. So we had a question about someone who is doing the UBE in New York and also considering taking it in New Mexico. And they're asking whether it's an either or situation. So do I need to choose one jurisdiction or can I take the bar? So let's say take one in July and one in September.
That's a fascinating question. I don't know.
This has never happened before.
I mean, honestly, I hadn't even thought about that. Maybe I would start making your plans. I mean, if you're thinking that, and I love New Mexico, I think it's a great jurisdiction. I would, if I had a choice right now, if it were me and I was a New York bar taker, I'd just go and get my application into New Mexico and just go down there and take it there, no matter when they give it. That would be me. But that's a really interesting question. Could you do 3 exams in a year? That remains to be seen. I guess it would depend on the second jurisdiction deciding whether or not they're willing to let you sit for their exam if they know you took the exam in July. So I don't really know. That is great. Should we talk about Colorado for a minute? So just to give you a sense of the craziness right now, earlier this week, Colorado, which is a UBE jurisdiction, and is supposed to release results from February exam at the end of this month, I believe. Yes. Sent out an email to all of the applicants in Colorado that purported to have the results. And it had names in it and it had pass or fail results. Shortly after that, I don't know, an hour, maybe 2 hours later, they sent out another email and they said, oops, our bad. That was just a test run. We were just checking out our software and you should ignore those results. But it's not clear whether or not the results that were in that first email are valid or invalid. Yeah. So some people who saw it got a result and they don't know if that result is real or not real. I would work under the assumption that those numbers were just made up numbers and that if they were real, and I think, Megan, you made this point to me, if the results had been real results, they would have just said, okay, we sent them out 2 weeks too early, but they're real, go ahead and go with them. I think the fact that they didn't come back and say, yep, those were the real ones, is a pretty good indicator that they are not real. And I would not rely on whatever that first email was. But is that torture for people? Oh my gosh, the worst, right? The worst. So I think one of the things we're going to see, and this is why the Florida results on Monday are so important, big states that have a lot of bar takers, are scrambling to try and figure out how to do all of this remotely. And the Florida bar wrote this very long, self-serving, as they often do, piece talking about how wonderful they are and how they do all their scoring remotely and it's all done remotely. And then they said at the end, but of course we're not in the office, so we don't really know if that works or not. So it's like, okay, great, thanks. So I think everybody's just got to stay calm. because when we get to Monday morning, I almost guarantee you something's going to go wrong in Florida. I mean, even under the best of circumstances, things go wrong. And I just want everybody to take a deep breath and relax as best you can. I don't know what will happen on Monday, but almost invariably something will happen. So it's like being at the exam itself, and you just need to, we'll get it figured out, whatever it is. But Colorado, holy cow, that's a mess.
Yeah. I know. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of, it's just hard. Everyone is suddenly working from home and, trying to do jobs that should be fairly automated, but suddenly are really complicated, and doing it all while, they've got babies or children around and their partners, and it's a lot. So,
oh, look, my 4-year-olds hit send. The results that just come out. I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
I know that there have been questions I've gotten during the week about, how does this impact us as a bar review? The honest answer is it doesn't impact us very much at all. This is what we do all the time. So we're not having to scramble. So this is pretty normal for us. We are, working as we would normally work. We know that as Florida results come out on Monday, then the landscape begins to shift, because now we start to get into that season of Florida, New York, California, Georgia, Texas, states that are big, as well as the UBE states. So things speed up a bit. I want to just remind everybody to stay calm. It is inevitable. I'll say it again. It is inevitable that things will go wrong, because the examiners are working in a different atmosphere than they've ever worked in before. And it is also inevitable that there are going to be lots and lots of changes to jurisdictions and what they choose to do. We will keep you informed of all of that. Where there are significant changes that we think impact a lot of our students, that link that's up at the top, I would like all of you to copy it and put it into your browsers and be aware of it. That is where we are posting everything that is changing, along with the actual order from the state. And that's the important document, I think, right, that you got to get to. And I know the NCBE has their document as well. And so ours is just maybe a little more convenient to get to. And for those of you taking the exam in July or fall or now February 2021, take a deep breath. It's all going to work out. It's all going to be okay. And we'll sort it out together step by step. That's what we knew as of Friday afternoon. But of course, there was still more Friday to come. And so I wanted to update you just a little bit on some last minute changes that occurred late in the day on Friday. In addition to what we told you about, 2 more states weighed in with new changes, bringing us up to 14 states, I think, in total that have announced some changes. New Hampshire indicated that they would be changing their test date from July of 2020, and that they will now be giving the test in fall of 2020, and they have not identified a date, but that is the only change that they have made at this point. A more interesting change actually came from the state of Wyoming. Not that it's a large state, but this is an interesting position. They announced an emergency rule that authorized the July 2020 bar applicants temporarily be admitted with supervision if certain conditions were met. And these conditions were not all that unusual, except that the rule itself is only conditionally issued on the bar exam not being administered in July, and it won't apply at all if Wyoming's able to hold the July exam. And Wyoming is still planning to hold the exam on July 28th and 29th. So I'm not sure where that leaves you if you're a Wyoming bar taker. Maybe you'll get to practice, maybe you won't. But again, these provisional jurisdictional accreditation will only apply, as best we can tell, to recent law grads and people that have not taken the bar exam before. So if you're a bar repeater, if you graduated from law school before 2020, in most jurisdictions that will disqualify you. If you didn't go to law school in that particular state, that may disqualify you in some of those states. So make sure that you check those out. We have put a link to all of the orders from the states that have issued them on our webpage, and we're going to link to that again in the show notes for you as well, so that you can stay up to date with that. And we'll continue to update those jurisdictions as we get more information from the bar examiners and the jurisdictions themselves. So as you can see, it's a fast-changing tableau, and there's a lot going on here. I want to just remind you that in order to keep up with all these changes and to see how you might react and deal with them as a bar taker in July or fall of 2020, we have a free training webinar. It's called Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam. We're offering it Saturday afternoons Tuesday and Thursday nights. You can just go to the show notes and register, or you can go to celebrationbarreview.com/now, pick the day that works best for you, and then join us for that special training session. And I do hope you'll all be with us. We wish everyone health and safety, of course, in these strange and unusual times, and certainly hope that everyone is staying well. We wish good luck to everyone getting their bar exam results, not just in Florida, but in other jurisdictions coming up over the next couple of weeks. And we'll update you as those results come out as to what they're telling us about the trends in the bar exam and what we are learning from them. And we'll be back to you again next week and let you know what's going on again as we keep moving towards both the July 2020 and September 2020 exams, and we get results in from February 2020. So take care, everyone. We'll see you next week along the Extra Mile.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.